for coming, mashallah. I'm surprised. I heard that there's some deadlines this week again. So sorry about that. But if you regulate your time during the day, then it's possible still, you know. You can still do it. If you don't wake up at 12 or 1 o'clock, you know, then you could still, you know, after Fajr maybe it's an idea nowadays, you know. After Fajr you could go to the library, or what's library nowadays? In my time it was library. Nowadays it's internet, so you can be nicely at home, internet, check everything, right? Do you still go to libraries?
Yeah.
Honestly?
Yep.
What for?
So gain a mood for it.
Sorry?
Gain an environment. Good environment to study.
It's true. It's still valid, isn't it? Yes, yeah. Okay. All right. Jazakallah. Oh, good. Now let's start straight away. Yesterday, quick recap. Who would like to help me? Some were here. What was it about yesterday? We spoke about
spread by the sword.
Yeah. This is the main thing actually. This is the main theme. I want to go through it. Islam was spread by the sword, right? Right? Islam was spread by the sword. It's such a pity that we don't have, well, as far as I can see, not many non-Muslims here, because this is something for them. I mean, it does not mean that we know everything, of course, that all Muslims sitting here know, of course, that this is not true, and they know, of course, everything about what's happening around us, but it would be really great to have them here to even, a suggestion from my side to the ISOCs in this country, I've said it many times already, get me somebody to debate. You know, I would love to have a debate, Anas. I don't know, but I've suggested it. People seem to be nowadays a little bit reluctant to debate these issues. Okay? Was Islam spread by the sword? You can get me the best historian in this country, you know, inshallah, I would love to. It's a challenge, really a challenge. We did something like this in Greece. You know, we had some historians, actually one historian who agreed to come, just one out of so many. He agreed to come, and he was a very open-minded person, until he met me. Because the other brother whom I'm doing da'wah with, he's half Egyptian, so that was acceptable. But for them suddenly to meet a Greek Muslim, he was really shocked. It took him a while to get over the issue that, hey, there's a Greek Muslim. So, but alhamdulillah, we did that. And I really think that, you know, they come so unprepared because they think that we're idiots. Honestly. You tell them, they're like, yeah, come, no problem, no problem. You know, the Muslims are going to verse me. So you will see, they come so unprepared. It's good for us, you know. So better be prepared. Now, we spoke yesterday about two main issues. The one is history. What is the importance of history and why we're studying history and why is history important for us Muslims? Quickly, recap. I want more action today. I want more action today. Come on. I'm still here today. Tomorrow, after 8, I have to leave straight away. Really. So, come on guys. Action. You can take it until 8:39, I don't mind today. Come on.
Well, we know our history, how Islam spread in the East and the Africas.
No.
What does that mean?
Why is history important?
Well, we learn from our mistakes.
To learn from our mistakes, one thing.
Yeah.
Another thing, another point.
To know the truth.
To find out what actually happened. Good. The thing is, how sure are we that we really know everything? We're not. Okay? You can never say 100% that's what happened. But you can come close to the truth. How do we find out? I mean, I don't know, any historian here, anybody who's studying history, anybody who's close to humanities or something? How do we find out actually what we're saying is true? Because I can tell you one thing, and then you have Joe Greaves coming over and he's going to tell you the other thing, the opposite. So I can tell you, as we said yesterday, Africa, you know, how did Islam spread in Africa? By trade, by bliss, by lust. And then he will come and tell you, actually, you know, when the Arabs invaded North Africa, they killed quite some Berbers. That's what they will tell you, right? So what are you going to say on this? So who's right now? Am I wrong here now? If I tell you that actually Islam was spread by trade, we mentioned yesterday, well now I wanted to hear from you, but okay, Islam was spread mainly by trade, right, in Africa. Okay? From where to where, how, what? Quickly? What happened?
From the north and the east.
From the north, what north?
Egypt area.
Okay, not only, right? Because mainly actually it was the other side, Morocco, right? West North Africa, Northwest Africa. Morocco, this area. Who was the ones who were responsible for spreading Islam?
Berbers.
Who are the Berbers? French people. What's this? Barbarians. Who are they?
Egyptians, Moroccans.
No.
No?
No, 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 no.
Himself.
Please. Don't do that to the Egyptians. Okay? The Berbers, what is his name first of all? Where does it come from?
Anyone who's not Greek.
It comes from, wait, don't mix it up. It comes from barbarian. Where does barbarian come from?
Anyone who's not Greek.
From the Greeks, ancient Greeks, believing that anybody who doesn't speak Greek is not Greek, so he's a barbarian. You know, bar. I don't understand what you're saying. That's what bar means. Okay? It's just a strange language you're speaking. I don't understand you. So you're a barbarian. So, out of barbarians, the Berbers, of course, in North Africa, they were living in North Africa before the Arabs came to North Africa, right? These were the indigenous people living in North Africa. They were, of course, and the best example for a barbarian, they didn't speak Greek, they were living outside of Europe. Best example, so they got the name Berbers. So until nowadays, there is a kind of Berber nation, around 20 million people most probably, starting somewhere in Morocco, most of them, around 70 to 80%, finishing somewhere in the south of Egypt, you know, a very tiny percentage of 5% in Egypt, something like that. Very tiny percent in Tunisia, but the majority, Algeria, Mali, Mauritania, the border region in the south of Algeria, Morocco, these are Berber people, not Arabs. The Arabs came later. The Arabs came from Arabia. The Arabs came from Arabia and they spread Islam. What happened to the Berbers? So they killed all the Berbers and they forced them to accept Islam, right? So the Arabs came from, you know, the east. They came from Arabia, what is nowadays Saudi Arabia, Mecca, Medina, the Sham region, right, Syria and so on. They went to Egypt, they killed the Egyptians, and then they went on to Libya, killed the Libyans, went on to Morocco, killed them all, and then everybody there was Muslim and happy and everything, right? Come on now, what happened then? Was it like this?
No.
Yeah, what happened?
Like when they were doing trade, they showed like what Muslims do, and they were very interested. So
Okay, look. Okay, let's don't. Okay. Who was doing trade? When the Arabs came, they were doing trade with the Berbers. When they went to Egypt, how did they open Egypt? We didn't speak about this one, but when they opened Egypt, you know, when they introduced Islam to Egypt, it was not necessarily all very peaceful. Okay, there were fights. There were battles, there were people, the Berbers actually resisted the Arabs for a long time, until 700. And all the Berbers accepted Islam en masse by 700. Okay? But there were fights between the Berbers and the Arabs. Okay? So it was not through trade in that case. But that does not mean that the Arabs came and forced the Berbers to accept Islam. The Berbers accepted Islam through looking into how the Arabs were behaving, through looking at the business, the transactions and everything was happening while the Arabs were there. Okay, do you understand this one? So, there were fights. They were actually entering foreign land. Arabs were coming to the foreign land, into North Africa, okay, which was occupied or which was inhabited by Berbers, by the indigenous African, North African people. So some of them didn't want them there, so they fought them. Some of them accepted them as equals, invited them in their country, invited them in their region, and we should not forget that time there was no Morocco as we know it nowadays, and Tunisia as we know it nowadays, and Algeria as we know it nowadays, right? Regions. Okay, so some of them accepted them, the Arabs settled, they, as Muslims, showed Islam, people at least saw them praying, some of them made da'wah, okay, and Berbers as a nation, by 700, all Berbers were Muslims. Okay? From there on, what happened to the Berbers then? The majority of people living in North Africa still are Berbers, in a way. You know, forget Egypt. But most of them are still, like in Algeria and Morocco, are still Berbers. What happened to the Berbers? Muslim Berbers now. What happened after 700? That's what we're going to talk about. Today we're going to talk about this. 11 years later, Tariq bin Ziyad, who was a Berber, set foot in the hill of Tariq, the mountain of Tariq, which commonly known as Gibraltar. Gibraltar. Jibr, Arabic, Jibr, hill or mountain of Tariq. The mountain of Tariq. You see that? Gibraltar means the mountain of Tariq. Now, so Tariq bin Ziyad was not an Arab, he was a Berber, but he didn't play a role. It was not important because they fought under the banner of Islam. The same like Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, he was a Kurd, but he didn't play a role. Okay? Now, we have to understand this nonsense here now, because what's happening nowadays, and I read today again something in The Economist, something very, very, very upsetting, you know, not something new, but it's just simply that it's getting that way. Everywhere in the world, they're trying to implement the idea of nationalism. The ideology of nowadays is secular nationalism. Okay? So now, what are certain people who do not understand Islam, who do not want Islam, who are non-Muslims, what do they take out of there? They just follow this idea blindly and follow what these colonialists and the Europeans and the Americans tell them. So you have now the Berbers in North Africa who are fighting for independence. You have Berber people living in France especially, you know, and the French of course support this movement because it's a nationalist movement. It has nothing to do with Islam, it has nothing to do with any religion, it has to do with them wanting a national state, which is a nationalist idea. And that was never an issue before. Okay? So the Berbers in North Africa spread Islam to the north. What about the south now? We're talking about Africa. What happens from the north down to the south? Meaning West Africa. From North Africa down to West Africa, what happens? There we go. What do the Berbers do? They trade with the people in West Africa, as they traded before already. They knew these people before. Europeans did not know them, but they did. So there was a contact already before with West Africans, and with other African, sub-Saharan African people. So the trade went on. But this time, the Berber who came, or people who came from the north, were Muslims. So they were trading with the people in the south, as they used to do before. But suddenly they see the pray in congregation, talking about Islam, you know, being honest. Unbelievable, but it's like this. There used to be Muslims who were honest before. So they would tell them, don't buy these dates are not good, buy these ones. So people saw that, the characteristic of a Muslim, and nowadays West Africa is mainly Islamic. No fights at all. No historian will tell you something else. Nobody fought, except for some, obviously, you know, what was happening in history, obviously. But we're not talking about an occupation coming down from the north to occupy West Africa. No. All right? No. The Muslims who accept, the people in Africa who accepted Islam actually went on and did what? They established massive empires. The Kanem-Borno Empire, for example, is one of them, okay, which was 1,000 years old, in nowadays Nigeria. Many other empires developed in that area. What about East Africa? That's West Africa, northwest. From north they came down, trade, fine. What about East Africa? Kenya, Tanzania. What happened there? How did Islam go there? What happened there?
Trade as well.
Trade who?
Yemen and Oman.
Oman, Yemen, the Arabs were trading before Islam already with East Africans. Now, they had established even settlements there. And then when the Arabs became Muslim, they, of course, things changed. Because we're talking about trade of 300 years before they became Muslim, right? 300 years before they became Muslim, there was trade between Arabia and East Africa. Then the Arabs become Muslims, so Islam comes to East Africa and follows from East Africa, goes into Central Africa. It goes inside into the hinterland. From Kenya, Tanzania, inside. Okay? What about Southern Africa now? What about countries like South Africa, Zimbabwe, Botswana? What about them? How did Islam get there?
Through the Dutch.
What about the Dutch? Okay, the Dutch, they were colonizing South Africa and Indonesia. So what happened in Indonesia, Muslim country at that time? So?
The mullahs went to South Africa.
Sorry?
Prisoners.
They took people who were becoming too dangerous to them, okay? They were calling for jihad. They took them away from them, ulama and scholars, and they took them and to South Africa, far away. What happens in South Africa then? They start preaching Islam. They couldn't care less. They're somewhere else. That's their job. It doesn't matter if they're in Indonesia, or if they're in Malaysia, or if they're in Australia, or if they're in South Africa. Their job is to preach Islam. They tell people what Islam is. And mashallah, within no time, small pockets of Muslims were developing in South Africa, in Southern Africa in general. Okay? Now, when the Dutch and the British woke up, it was too late, as it normally is. You know? It was too late. They realized slowly but surely there is a strong Muslim presence in South Africa and in Southern Africa. Right, up to there. Any questions with regards to that?
Is it not similar to just the Kurds when they accepted Islam without any fights?
Sorry?
For the Kurds when they accepted Islam.
Now we're coming to the Kurds,
Yeah.
Asia. We're coming there, inshallah. Forget this one for the moment. Let's concentrate on Africa. Any questions with regards to Africa? Everything clear? That's something we should not ask because nobody will say something. But any questions still? No. Good. Why do we start with Africa? Why did I start with Africa? I could have started with Arabia. I could have started with Europe. Why do you think I started with Africa? Ilham, why did I start with Africa? Because of the first hijrah. 615, the first hijrah of the Muslims. What did they go to? They left Mecca because they were persecuted, right? And they went to Habasha, Abyssinia. Nowadays called Ethiopia, Eritrea, this area, okay? That time it was not clear that was Abyssinia, no. So, Ethiopia, Eritrea, this area. So, have you realized, by the way, something that I'm not very sure if we focused on it a little bit, I mentioned it for sure, but I don't know if I focused on this. Have you understood that Islam spread first in Africa before it spread in Arabia? Have you understood that Islam was accepted by the first ruler in the world who was an African rather than an Arab? Have you thought about it? An-Najashi from Ethiopia, from Habasha, he was a ruler of Ethiopia and he accepted Islam. And in Arabia, during that time, in Mecca, the Meccans were persecuting the Muslims. I don't know, I find this mind-blowing. We all have heard something about it, but have you realized Islam was first established in Africa before it was established in Arabia? Okay? So now, that's why you can clearly say that Islam has more rights in Africa than it has in any other part of the world. It was definitely the first one there. The Christians, when did they come to, what happened with you remember the maps? The issue of the Christians, missionary coming to Africa. Were the Christians there before the Muslims? Or what happened exactly with the Muslims and Christians and Ethiopia? What's happening? What is all this about? If I tell you now, yeah, but guys, Christianity was there first. Christianity was before, long before Islam. So of course, the Africans had accepted Christianity long before they became Muslim, right? Right, isn't it?
Wrong.
Why is it wrong?
Wrong.
Which other parts? Christianity is an older religion than Islam.
Like Abyssinia, you were saying there were Christians before.
Right.
Before Islam.
And what else? Where else do we find Christians? Long before the Muslims.
Well, the Africans didn't accept it by their own wills. They didn't.
Wait. There are two parts in Africa where we clearly find Christians who accepted Christianity long before the Muslims came. That is mainly in Egypt and in Abyssinia, in Ethiopia. Okay? That's it. No other part of Africa. Not in West Africa, not in Central Africa, not in Southern Africa, and not in East Africa. What happened in this part of Africa? Islam comes first. Okay? And most of these parts were actually Islamic long before they even had come in contact with any European missionary or Christian. Okay? A very important point. Alright. We're moving on from there. We're coming to here. 711. Tariq bin Ziyad, Gibraltar. Okay? Now, I want you to... There we are. I want you to take a look at these words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 words. We can make them 10. Make them 10. We divide them in two groups. We have the girls on the one side, easy, and the boys on the other side. Still, I would like to divide the guys actually in two groups, and maybe the girls also in two groups. Each one of you, let's take, if you have them 10, let's take, 2 or 3 each. Let's say, for example, the first two, fractionné or fractionatum, alfama, and provençal troubadour. These three, just first 3 words. Okay, let's see. Up to, this group here. Exactly. All right? I want you to take a look on your computers, on your tablets, phones, whatever you have, and I want you to check these 3 words, these first 3. What do they mean? If you know, have some input, discuss it. I give you exactly 6 minutes, not longer. Actually, you know what? I find it exciting. I would like to start with the girls. They found something very amazing. Gzira is Jazeera, and Ramadan is Ramadan. I made a mistake with Ramadan. So let's see what you have to say. What's it? Munira, can you explain to us what? Can we all listen, please? Because it's really interesting. Can we Gzira and Ramadan? Yeah. Jazeera. Okay, so why does it say Ramadan?
I want someone coming to home. I can give it later, man.
No.
Who's dying for this? Who's dying for this?
I want to give it to him. Come on.
So who are the
You
people?
done, yeah?
That's important. Actually, I would like to know what language it is. French. Okay. Anybody else an idea? Munira said, interestingly enough, Gzira, I guess she's Arab. You're Arab, right? Gzira is Jazeera, she said, right? And Ramadan is my mistake. I should have written Ramadan. Right? So any other idea? Okay. So Ramadan is Ramadan and Gzira is Jazeera. So what is there in Jazeera and what is there in Ramadan then? What is this then? Why does it say Gzira and Ramadan? If it was like this. Any idea? Okay. Let's leave it like this. I don't see anything coming out. Doesn't matter. No problem. That's fine. Thank you. Next one. La convivencia ojalá en Córdoba. That group over there. No, that group over there. What about Córdoba? The easiest one.
Okay, what we got for Córdoba was that it's a city in Andalusia, in Spain.
Andalusia.
Andalusia. And then it was the capital of the Islamic Emirate, was Córdoba. And then it was ruled by the Khalifa Al-Hakam II. And it was the center of education at that time. And
What
then-
time?
10th century.
Only. Okay. Okay. Definitely. Okay.
And
All right.
it was known for mathematics and astronomy.
Okay. So Córdoba, okay, is a city in Andalusia. Andalusia is a province in Spain today, nowadays. Okay. And Córdoba used to be the capital of an Islamic empire, since they say. Okay, that's what you found out. Córdoba, I'm sure that most of you have heard about Córdoba. There is, of course, a connection what we're doing today, Al-Andalus, right? Andalusia, Al-Andalus. So Córdoba used to be the capital, okay? And it used to be a center of learning, okay? Good. Okay, now let's see the next one. Ojalá, sister. You said it was easy. What is ojalá? Well, she was here last year, so sorry? God willing. So what language is ojalá? Sorry? Spanish. The Spaniards say ojalá, inshallah. Do they say that? Really? Are they Muslims, the Spanish people?
Because J is yeah in Spanish. So J is not J. It's not pronounced as J.
Ojalá. Okay? Ojalá in Spanish and Oxalá in Portuguese. X is Portuguese, J is Spanish indeed. Ojalá is Portuguese, Spanish, and Oxalá is Portuguese. Now, question is still, is Portuguese and Spanish. But why are they using Allah in there? What is that? Why do the Spaniards use Allah? Aren't they Christians? 700 years of Muslim presence. Okay? That's a common term. It's not something like, by the way, there used to be a term, ojalá. Commonly, if Spanish people talk to each other, okay, and they say, vamos mañana, ojalá. We'll see, oh, we go tomorrow there, inshallah. Actually, ojalá is inshallah.
Do they still use it today?
And they use it, yes, 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 yes. Yes, 100%. Last year we had a Portuguese sitting here, do you remember?
Yeah.
Where is he?
I know who you're talking about. He's not here.
Okay. He was a missionary. So he was there last year, you know, to check out what we're doing. And I had several conversations with him. And Oxalá in Portuguese, it's a very common term. Very normal. As we say in Islamically, Arabic, inshallah, see you tomorrow. That's how they use it in Spanish and in Portuguese until nowadays. But they do not connect it to Allah. It's just part of the language now. It has become part of the language. Next. What was the next one?
Silvers.
No. There was something else there.
Doesn't
There
it mean?
was still. So we have ojalá. La convivencia. La convivencia. Zara. Okay, coexistence. Coexistence. What coexistence? What's happening? Very good. Tariq bin Ziyad arrived in Gibraltar, which is Spain. Okay, he arrived there, and within 7 years, the Muslims had reached France. Within 7 years, I will show you the map later. Within 7 years, the Muslims had reached France. On horse, fighting. The policy that they established in Spain as well as in Portugal, this is called the Iberian Peninsula, was not democracy, was not kingdom, but it was convivencia. This was the policy. What does it mean? As Arab said, is coexistence, living together. Christians, Muslims, and Jews were not only living together. There were enough marriages, you know, Muslims would marry Jewish women, Christian women, Jews would work together, translate, you know, Greek sources, ancient Roman sources. They would give this through in Arabic as well as in Latin or in Greek. There was a massive exchange of cultural, a massive cultural exchange, a massive exchange of knowledge. And that was la convivencia. That meant clearly that was the policy. We lived together with them. It did not mean we killed them all until they become Muslim. It meant we all live together with each other and we all respect and tolerate each other. That's what the convivencia meant. And that was 700 years in Spain and in Portugal. The Iberian Peninsula. People forget this. Portugal was also once part of the Muslim Empire. And it became early independent, okay? So, convivencia. Now, we move over to Silves. Who are here? Where are we? Here. Silves. What is that?
Portugal.
It's a city in Portugal, in the south.
Yeah.
The equivalent of Cordoba. Cordoba in Spain was Silves in Portugal. So, as Cordoba became, but there was no Portugal in Spain at that time, but in that region, Silves became the center of knowledge for the people living in that region, under the Muslim rule, and Cordoba became the center of knowledge for the people living there. So if you go nowadays to Portugal, you go to Silves or to Lule or these kind of places in the south, the Algarve, you will find a lot of Islamic influence still. Okay? So that's Silves, the equivalent of Cordoba in Portugal. Moros, interesting. Brother, tell me again, you said something about Moros before.
Yeah, the inhabitant of the Muslims in Philippines.
In the Philippines.
Yeah.
So what do the Philippines have to do with Andalus today here? Why did I mention this one? Did I make a mistake again, like Ramadan before?
The Philippines came from Spain, innit?
Okay. First thing is, nowadays in Spain, every Muslim is called Moro. Okay? Moros comes from the Greek term mavros, which means black. The Spanish people, the Visigoths, the people living in Spain, before the Muslims arrived, they, as soon as they came in contact with the Muslims, saw that they were darker people, or just gave them another name. Instead of calling them Muslims, it's typical by the way, you give them another name. And they called them Moros, black people, because they came from Africa. So they gave them the name Moros. Every Muslim nowadays in Spain, until nowadays, is called Moros. If you're black or white, it doesn't matter. As long as you're Muslim, you're Moros. When the Spanish went to the Philippines used to be a Spanish colony, by the way. When the Spanish went to the Philippines, they arrived in an island called Mindanao, in the south of the Philippines. Mindanao is still an Islamic province, or Islamic island. Muslims living there. And when they saw Muslims living there, they started calling them Moros. Plus, another crazy fact, listen carefully here. People living in the Mindanao have a darker complexion. Why? Before, and we'll come to speak about this one, Australia. What is the connection between Australia and the Philippines? What do you think? Any idea? Who are the real Australians? Not the cowboys, you know. The real Australians, the Aboriginal people, right? How dark are they? Very. These people had contact with Indonesia long before Captain Cook arrived in Australia. Listen, 200 to 300 years before the British even contemplated of going to Australia, there was contact between Muslim Indonesians and Aborigines in the Northern Territory of Australia. There were villages in Northern Territory of Australia, which is nowadays Darwin, which were Muslim villages. Aboriginal people accepted Islam. Indonesians married to Aboriginal women. Some of them, they took them with them to Indonesia, to the Philippines, and to the Malay archipelago. Which meant that many Aborigines, Muslim Aborigines, arrived in the part of the world which is called the Malay archipelago, which also falls under Philippines. So in Mindanao, in the Philippines, you will have darker Muslims because some of them have Aboriginal blood. Subhanallah. And this is all kept hidden from us. These are new sources they came out with. This is all kept hidden from us because they would have to admit the genocide that happened in Australia has to be admitted, because what happened with all these people? What happened with all these Northern Territory Muslims when the British arrived? Finished. End of story. Not one person survived from that time. There is not one family that has any roots. Not one. You know? And it's not a British thing, but honestly, it's a very European thing. And I can say that I'm double European. I'm more European than anybody here. So, that's a European thing, guys. I want you to show me a place where Europeans have gone and they have done something good. And don't come and tell me railway in India. Okay? Now, honestly, I want you to weigh out the positives, the advantages and disadvantages of being under European rule and being under Muslim rule. When the Aborigines traded with the Indonesian Muslim Indonesians, the Indonesians, they went to Australia and they were borrowing land from the Aborigines. They were paying them to use their land to do farming. 200 years before the Europeans arrived. As soon as the British arrived, their policy was racism, getting rid of anybody that looked a little bit darker. All the children were taken away from Muslim families and from Aboriginal families and were put in Christian homes, in churches, okay? And they became all orphans. And this is a very common, that's commonly known. It's not my thing. And I know that there might be people who say to me, you make it black and white. I had somebody, an Algerian from France. I mean, honestly, an Algerian from France was sitting in the audience once in Birmingham, it was, I think, University of Birmingham. And he told me, doctor, don't you think you make it black and white too? I said, what is black and white? You're honestly telling me, I am telling you something that is black and white, but you don't accept it from a Muslim, yet do you accept the other side from these guys? So what I want to do is, you know the one side of the story now. You know that they tell you everything was fine and good, and when the Muslims came, they killed you all, and Islam was spread by the sword. Now I come and give you the other side. Now you put them together and you find the truth. So why would I come and tell you, actually we're all great people, when the Europeans arrived in Africa, they loved the Africans, they all went together and they all lived with each other happily ever after. Okay? That's the one side of the story that people want you to believe. But that's not the truth. So I'm giving you the other side. And it's up to you if you take this one. Or you have two sides of the story, you put them together and you find out what the truth is. So if you wanted to hear the same things, then you don't have to sit here. So now, the Moros. So these are Muslims basically. In Spanish or in Portuguese they call us Moros. Azulejos, what is this? Azulejos in Spanish and azulejos in Portuguese. What is this? Azul in Spanish means blue. Azul in Spanish means blue. Give me a hint. Any idea? Have you found anything? Who was that?
Ceramic tiles.
Ceramic tiles, yes, very good. There's a specific art, okay, in Portugal and in Spain, but mostly in Portugal. If you go to, throughout the country, you can go and buy souvenirs, ceramic tile in blue, bluish, everything is blue. That's why it's azul, blue, azulejos. It's basically a type of art which came from the Muslims. They brought it over. Okay, and it became now a Portuguese or Spanish type of art. But it's originally Muslim. Provençal troubadour, the troubadours.
Troubadours were, back in France, poets in the 11th and 13th century.
Good. So what does this have to do with Al-Andalus? Provençal, the Provence, in France, there is an area called Provence, in the south of France, right? So they came from the south of France. So why did I put it up there, then, the troubadours? What does this have to do with Al-Andalus and Muslims and everything? Poetry. Poetry. The Muslims were in France as well. We'll come back to this, inshallah. Now, Al-Fama. Somebody mentioned Al-Fama is an Arabic word. Al-Fama, right? It means something with mouth. Okay, so that's it, right? So why did I take this word then? Why not another one? I could have taken so many Arabic words. Because there is a part in Lisbon, in the capital of Portugal, which is the oldest part of Lisbon. In Lisbon, there is a part which is called Alfama, which basically is still originally as it used to be under Muslim rule. Okay, if you go to Portugal, if you go to Lisbon, to the capital, you will go to, if you go to the Alfama, which is the oldest part of Lisbon, you will, mashallah, you will feel as if you are reliving the time of the Muslims in the 11th century, 10th, 11th century. Okay? That's the Alfama. And as you hear, all terms, all words in any European language starting with Al are Arabic. Fraxine, that's another mind-blowing thing. Fraxine, have you ever heard of it? I heard somebody saying Farakshinet, what was that?
It's a fortress established by pirates. That's what I heard.
Yeah. Okay, well, Wikipedia. Okay. So it comes indeed, it comes from...
It's a Latin.
Yeah, in Latin, fraxinetum, fraxine in French, farakshinet in Arabic. Who are the Frankish people? Who were they?
French.
Exactly, the French people. Now what happens? Fraxine was the base of the Muslims in France, guys. There used to be a Muslim settlement for around 100 years in the south of France, which is nowadays Saint-Tropez, Nice, Monaco. There where the rich and glorified and all these kind of people meet once a year, and they have all these yachts there and everything. That used to be a Muslim colony, a Muslim settlement for around 100 years. It was called Farakshinet. So, and they came from Al-Andalus. Okay? And they were actually, on the orders of the Emir, they went to colonize that area. Okay? So now, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Europe. Okay? We started with Africa, because that's what we said was important for Islam first. But then, Europe will play an important role, especially this part of Europe. This is called the Iberian Peninsula. So Portugal and Spain. Portugal and Spain. Portugal. What is this in Arabic? Who knows Arabic? Orange. This whole area is full of orange trees. Okay? Portugal is full of orange trees. Okay? So they gave them the right name. Al-Andalus, this whole area was called Al-Andalus, the Arabs, the Muslims.
I thought there's no relation with the Portugal. No?
But that's it.
Yes.
700 years of Muslim rule. They have more than 6,000 words in the Spanish and Arabic and Portuguese language which are directly related to Arabic. Ojalá is one of them, which they use daily. Okay? So, Portugal, right? Spain, nowadays Spain, Al-Andalus. The Muslims called it Al-Andalus. Why? Because the people who were living there before were called Vandals. Vandals. It was a Gothic Germanic tribe. Okay? There were Germanic people coming from the north and they settled there. And these people, Vandals, were barbarians. And the name Vandals, that allowed the Muslims to call them Al-Andalus. Okay? That's a development linguistically. So, Spain, Portugal. Now, France gives you an idea, right? Portugal, Spain, that's the Iberian Peninsula. France is up here. Italy with Sicily, the island of Sicily. That's another island, Sardinia, Corsica. Switzerland, Austria, Germany. Now, pay a close attention. Pay really a close look to it. The Muslims, when they arrived in Spain, within 7 years they were in Tours and Poitiers. Have you ever heard of the cities Tours or Poitiers?
Yeah,
What happened there?
I've heard of it, but I don't know what it means.
Okay. Not even 50 kilometers outside of Paris. This was a battleground between the Muslims. That's how far they came. Paris is somewhat here. Between the Christian kings and the Muslims from the south.
Is that name?
That's when they stopped.
The name again for that.
Tours and Poitiers. Tours and Poitiers.
T-O-U-R-S.
Tours and Poitiers. Two cities. The one is called Tours and the other one Poitiers. Okay? They still exist. You can still find them in France. And they are proud of this the legacy that they have. They kicked the Muslims back. Up to there they say the Muslims came. That was it. They didn't go any further. And that's, we're talking about France. 50 kilometers or 60, 70 kilometers outside of Paris. That was, of course, a horror for the Christians at that time, right? Imagine 50, 60, 70 kilometers outside of Paris, you have the Muslim horde, according to them, coming towards you. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Yes, sir?
What's that French island just near Italy? Yeah, above,
This is Sicily.
No, above.
Corsica.
The
Corsica and
French
Sardinia.
island. The green French island.
This one is
Russia,
Corsica.
is that?
Huh?
The green French one is Corsica.
Corsica.
And this under it is Sardinia, belonging to Italy. Okay, now, so France. I want you also to look at this country here. What is this here? This is Switzerland. Now, what do the Muslims have to do in Switzerland, right? As far as I know, there's a ban of minaret nowadays. There was a whole discussion, 4 mosques in the whole of Switzerland. Islam has nothing to do with Switzerland, right? The Muslims have nothing to do with Switzerland. I mean, there is no history with the Muslims, Maybe the people are right. It's just some immigrants who went to Switzerland in the 60s, 70s, some Turkish people, Moroccan people who established themselves in Switzerland, some Bosnians. So, Islam has nothing to do with Switzerland, right? Wrong. Wrong. Big times wrong. In the 10th century, Switzerland was a Muslim colony. And the Muslims had reached up to St. Gallen of Switzerland. St. Gallen is all the way at the German border. That means nearly the whole of Switzerland was for nearly 100 years, 65, 70 years, a Muslim settlement. Guys, it's mind-blowing. Nobody has taught us these things. Nobody tells you that. Why would they? Because they would have to admit that there is a connection. There was a connection already in the 9th and 10th century, not in 1960s and 70s, when the guest workers came to work. Not some Anatolian Turks. No, these were Muslims coming from Al-Andalus. And that's how far they came, up to Switzerland. German border. Now, Mediterranean Sea, that gives you a much better idea now. We're talking about Spain. We're talking about this Monaco, which used to be called Fraxinet. There is nowadays a small village up there, which is called Fréjus in French. And that is the area where Fraxinet used to be. So Monaco, Italy, Sicily used to be part of the Muslim world. Malta used to be part of the Muslim world. Greece, and the Balkans come later. But first of all, the West. From Africa, the people came up to here. Okay? That all was Muslim territory. The west, southwest of Europe used to be Muslim territory for nearly 700 years. The Iberian Peninsula, 200 years Sicily and Malta, and so on and so on. Now, any idea what this is?
Looks like he is Spain.
Exactly, where in Cordoba? That's the mosque in Cordoba. Okay? That is the masjid in Cordoba. And do you see the difference to any mosque? Do you recognize what we recognize as mosques nowadays? Come to this country, you know, especially people from certain areas come to this country. Okay? Yes, Mali. You know what I'm going to say now, right? So, we, you know, people from Pakistan, they come to this country, right? And they want to be acknowledged. That's good. I mean, they pay taxes, they work here and everything. Yes. So second generation, people grow up here, children grow up there, so they become British citizens and everything. Now, we have something here that's called British Islam, or British Muslims. Now, all of you here, or most of you, are British Muslims. Nobody asks you where you come from originally. It's not important because now you're British. And Islam has become part of the society as well as Christianity is, as Judaism was. If we want to argue, as they argue, Islam came later after Christianity, then the whole of Europe should not be Christian then, because the Jews were here before. So if you want to argue like this, you want to say, yeah, but hey guys, you came much, much later. Islam, the Muslims came much later, after the Christians. Good, fine. You guys came after the Jews. So now, this is not a real argument, is it? So the argument is broken, finished, done. So now, if you say you're a British Muslim, and you establish Islam in this country because you have the right in this country, okay, to practice your religion freely, in Europe, we are right, we have the right, right? European citizens, I'm a European citizen. I have the right to practice my religion is Islam. So that means I can have my own house of worship. But I do not want to make Karachi out of London. I do not want to make Lahore out of Birmingham.
Too late.
Now, what I want to say with that, is, please, let us integrate Islamically. What does it mean? Integration does not mean assimilation. There are two different things. We have integration and we have assimilation. Everybody here who screams about integration, the average Joe on the street, says integration, but they mean assimilation. What does assimilation mean? What does assimilation mean? What is assimilation, guys? It means I become like them. I go to the pub, I drink, I go out, have fun, blah, 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 what they call fun, right? I could change my name, Stevie, you know? Joe, Jim, John, you know? So, and then I go out, you know, and I am totally integrated and I am British. But this is assimilation. Integration is you are Muhammad, Ahmed, Safia, Zainab, with your hijab on, you pray 5 times a day, you do not go to the pub because you don't drink alcohol, like they have vegans who don't eat, you know, vegetarians who don't eat meat and everything. So, this is our way of life, but that does not make us less British. That does not make us less European. Okay? And I built my mosque according to the surrounding, as our Muslim ancestors did. That's in Spain. When you go to Cordoba, there is no difference between this building and the rest of the buildings in the surrounding, because it's not taken from Morocco to put there like a UFO. I did not take a mosque from Lahore and put it in London, because it does not fit in the surrounding, and I don't want people to think that, hey, it's a foreign body. We are not foreigners here. If we want to be integrated in the society, then we have to accordingly, within the framework of Islam, and the framework is very big, we have to, according to the framework of Islam, integrate. Which means, why don't we just make a mosque that looks like one of these buildings that are in the surrounding? Why do I have to make a mosque looking as if it was somewhere in Karachi? It's not Karachi. It's not Lahore. It's not Jeddah. So I have to build a mosque looking like the surrounding. This is, according to our ancestors, Islam. This is. What did the Turks do? What did the Ottomans do when they arrived in Constantinople? Have you ever thought of this? You go to Istanbul, you say, oh, beautiful mosque, Turkish mosque, Turkish mosque. What Turkish mosque, man? These guys, this is all Greek architecture, Byzantine architecture. None of these things there is Turkish. The architecture is Byzantine, Greek, Orthodox, from before. Why? Because the Turks said, listen, hey, when we go to Constantinople, we're not going to change the structure of the city, because this is what the city looks like, and this is what I want to keep it. I want to keep it like this. And now everybody goes and sees a Turkish, go to North London, and you see this Byzantine structure, and you say, oh, Turkish mosque, shoot Turkish mosque, man. It looks like a Turkish mosque. What is it? It looks like a Greek Orthodox church, because that's what it was.
Hagia Sophia.
Hagia Sophia, that's exactly what the example was. The Hagia Sophia was a Greek church, a Greek Orthodox church. The dome structure is a Byzantine architecture. Byzantine, the Greek Orthodox Byzantines. And I'm not saying that because I'm Greek, I couldn't care less. But I'm saying it because we have to understand as Muslims how our ancestors were working, how everything was integrating before. You go to Mali, to Mauritania, you go and you find mosques. Have you seen how wonderfully they integrate in the surrounding? And you go to Côte d'Ivoire, as an example, Abidjan, the capital of Ivory Coast, you go and you see this UFO looking ugly Gothic church in the middle of the thing which doesn't fit at all the surrounding. The cathedral, which the French imported from France with their ideology. But this is colonialist mentality. And now we come here and we have the same colonialist mentality and build Pakistani mosques, Arab mosques, Turkish mosques. No, we should have British mosques, meaning fitting to the surrounding. Then we will be part of the society. How can you accept that a British woman, a British grandma passes your mosque and says, oh yeah, this is, the temple of the Muslims. She will say, this is Pakistani thing. That's what she will say, a Pakistani temple. Because it looks like a Pakistani temple. You understand what I want to say here? I had half a day. I wasted my breath half a day. I went to visit an architect, a famous architect who built in Berlin. He built a mosque in Berlin. According to him, he built a Turkish mosque in Berlin. So I went to visit him, and hours we were talking about, he did not understand what I wanted to say. I said, it was wrong for you to go and build a Suleymaniya looking mosque in Berlin. I wanted you to go down there and build a mosque for the Muslim community in Berlin. But what you did, you built a Turkish mosque somewhere in Berlin, which is absolutely alien to any German. Now, he got the money, he couldn't care less, but what he was trying to say, he said, yeah, listen, I was employed to go and build something for the Turkish community there. I said, you see, that's a big misunderstanding, a misconception here. When certain people come here, for them, it's I'm going to the Pakistanis. For them, it's I'm going to the Turks. We are Muslims. We're living in this country, 3 million Muslims. We are people from all over the world in this country. And I want a Muslim mosque. I don't want an Arabic, and I don't want a Pakistani mosque. I want a mosque. And I want it to be part of British society so that it can be accepted by British society. Don't misunderstand me. We're not changing Islam. We're doing exactly that. When they went to Spain, they came from Morocco. Does this look like a Moroccan mosque? No, of course not. Because they integrated it into the surrounding. So, I hope really he didn't understand. He just could not understand what I was saying. Just couldn't understand. That's the inside. Okay, that's the inside, just to give you an idea, just to give you a feel of being there. It's beautiful if you have the chance to ever go to Andalus, to Andalusia. It's nice to go and see the reminders of the Muslim empire from that time, 700 years. That one is the Alhambra.
Is that from outside, it's like surrounding?
It looks like a church.
Okay. Yes, I'm inside.
No, it's this one. This is inside. Okay? So it is the minbar, everything. That's fine. Inside is not a problem because you're inside already. The point is outside. that it fits nicely to the surrounding. Inside you can put whatever you want, with purple dots in there, whatever you think. But the point is that outside, it has to fit with the surrounding outside. Because it's the Spanish person who will pass outside and will see it and will say like, hey, this is, what is this again? Oh, that's a mosque. Oh, mosque. You know? You know what I'm saying? So it's all about integrating, really integrating. Okay? So, Alhambra. It's called Alhambra, according to Arabic, it means the red one, right? The red castle or the red palace. In the night especially, we see how it glows. It's beautiful. Amazing. If you go to Granada, by the way, to ever go and see that, you need to book a ticket long before. You cannot go on that day and stand in the queue and wait to get a ticket. Impossible. People just go to Granada for that thing. That's it, the Alhambra. Until nowadays. The Spanish people are smart enough, you know, they are smart enough to make business out of that. That's good. You know, we can't say anything. The Greeks are not there yet. So, this one is the inside of the mosque, okay, the masjid, the mezquita in Cordoba. And, well, that's Islamic architecture, of course. All right, and this is in the Alhambra, okay? It gives you an idea. Now, they used to receive people from all over the world there. The emirs used to receive people from all over the world there. People would come and they would write books. We have books in English and French and German. People would go back and they would be, they would not imagine where they were. They thought they were somewhere out of space. Okay, they would go and visit. They would see the cleanliness of the Muslims. By the way, hygiene, you know, with the wudu and washing yourself. This came because of the Muslims. You know that it was an anathema for the Christians until nowadays. It is an anathema for the Christian priests to wash yourself, to wash your body. You know that? Okay? Now, I tell you my own experience. I remember that a friend of mine, Greek guy, that time when I found Islam, he was looking into his own thing, as he was saying. He said, okay, let me find out about my religion first. Yeah? Okay. So he went to visit. We have in Greece, in the north of Greece, like the Vatican in Rome, we have a small republic of monks in the north of Greece, Mount Athos. Okay? So he went there to visit the monks. He was not a religious person, right? So when you go there, you get free lodge. You know, you can stay in their monastery, and you get bread to eat, you get food and everything. And he stayed there for a day in the one monastery. He went to the other monastery and he asked, you know, I need to take a shower. You know, I need to take a shower, sweaty. You know what the monk told him? He said, my child, it's about your soul, not about your body. They wash once a year when they go to Athens. Oh. My child, it's about the soul, not about your body. You know, and there's no nonsense what I'm saying here now. This is something you can find out. All the priests, and you know, and then you wonder why in the Renaissance people turned against the religion, against the Christianity, and why they have become secular to the bones. Logical. The church forbade them to read books. The church forbade them to wash. The church forbade them to do things that are good for your health. The church this, the church that. My God, I would go crazy too. So, in the end, you die and you give everything to the church. The churches became richer and powerful, and more richer and richer and richer, and the people became poorer and poorer. So it's logical that in 1789, the French Revolution happened in France, and they had to replace the ideology, Christianity before, with something different. So what happened? Secularism, nationalism came up. Nationalism is a part of secularism. So they had to look into something. So the French, with the French Revolution, introduced the idea of secularism in the world. And since that time, all the revolutions following were all secular and nationalist basis. All of them. No exception. So, it's logical. And then they tell you, yeah, but look, religion was bad for Europe. Yes, Christianity was bad for Europe. But who says that Islam is the same? When the Muslims were ruling as Muslims, we had that. And when the Christians were ruling as Christians, there was the Dark Middle Ages. They call it Dark Middle Ages. Okay? So, now that's the Islamic center in Madrid nowadays. Okay? Madrid is also an Arabic term. I don't know what it means exactly. But the city Madrid, the capital of Spain, was established by the Muslims. And it's an Arabic term. I don't know where it comes from. don't remember anymore. But Madrid is also Arabic. Okay? Now, this one is Gibraltar. This is Islamic Center in Gibraltar. Okay? The Islamic Center in Gibraltar is more in modern building, okay? But we should not forget Tariq bin Ziyad was the first one to arrive there. Now, so much about Spain up to now. In Spain, I would like, before we go on with Portugal, because they are closely interlinked actually, La Convivencia, Córdoba, I will show you something else after Portugal also, but I would like you to, you know, I do not, as you have realized, I think yesterday, I did not make any mention of specific dates or something, but sometimes it's important to remember some dates. I'm not talking about remembering what happened every year in the past, but 7/11, for example, if there is something I want you to take with you, I want you to remember, then please remember 711. That was the day that Tariq bin Ziyad arrived in Gibraltar. That was the day when Islam came to Europe. 711. Okay, Islam came and stayed in Europe from that time on. The different emirates that were established, the different phases of the emirates, okay? I'm not going through all of them, I'll just give you a very general and brief idea. The first one was the Umayyads, yes?
On that time, there is other part like Abbasi age.
No, yeah, exactly, that's what I'm going to say, wait. They were Umayyads, okay? We have in Islam 3 big dynasties, 4, 5, hundreds, but 4 or 5 that I want you to remember, to give you a general idea of what we're talking about, okay, every time. First, after Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, of course, the Khilafah Rashidin, the 4 Khilafah. No dynasty. No dynasty. Abu Bakr? Umar or Uthman? Umar, Uthman and Ali. They were not related, guys. There was not a dynasty. Okay? And if we go back to understanding of Islamic rule, then we go back to them. And I don't go back to the Ottomans, I don't go back to the Seljuks, I don't go back to the Umayyads, I don't go back to the Abbasids. I go back to them. None of them was established a dynasty. A dynasty means, just to make this clear, because maybe it's not clear, what does it mean, a dynasty?
Era.
Terror?
Era. E-R-A.
Oh, yes, basically, the father has a son who takes over the caliphate, the emirate, the kingdom, right? The king, the prince becomes automatically king. That's a dynasty. So we're talking about a dynasty that was established long after Rasulullah death, and long after the 4 Khilafah. After Ali radiallahu anha, who was the next one? Muawiyah. Do you see the connection? Muawiyah, Umayyad.
After that, Yazid.
Muawiyah was the established and the founder of the Umayyad dynasty. What does it mean? His son, who was useless, took over.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. I mean, honestly, guys, okay? Muawiyah was the one to establish a dynasty, the first one to establish a dynasty in Islam. There was none like this before. So his son, who was really useless, took over, and his son took over until 750. So the Umayyads were the first dynasty, Muslim dynasty. And they ruled from the city that's destroyed nowadays, the city that is every day going through pain nowadays, Damascus. These Umayyads were ruling from Damascus. Okay? Okay? They were ruling from Damascus. And then, what happens then? We should be careful, I mentioned it yesterday, some of you were not here, but you remember what I said yesterday? We should not imagine just because we are Muslims and we want to look into Muslim history, everything was honey and peace and they all loved each other and everything. What happens then? Ibn Abbas, who is Ibn Abbas?
Cousin of
Uncle.
Uncle of Rasul.
The uncle of Rasulullah. He forms another dynasty,
Yes.
the Abbasids. So after the Umayyads come the Abbasids.
Around 200 years or?
How did they take over?
What year? He said.
from 751 straight.
Yeah.
How do they take over? You know, the Umayyads were like, okay guys, come on, let's give it to the other dynasty. No. They created such a bloodshed that Abdurrahman ibn Auf, the first one who arrived in Spain, who was an Umayyad, he had to leave, he founded, okay, the dynasty in Spain. He had to leave from Damascus all the way through North Africa to find refuge in Spain and Andalus. And they even in Morocco at the Strait of Gibraltar, they killed everybody in front of him, his family whole, exterminated all of them. And he was the only one who survived to go over to cross to go to Spain. Muslims fighting Muslims, right?
Yes.
We're talking about the Abbasids fighting the Umayyads. That's how the Abbasids take over. A coup. It's a coup. Okay? If it was something that was good or right, it's another question. We're not going into this issue here now. If the Umayyads were bad rulers before or good rulers and the Abbasids were better, whatever, this is not what we're discussing. I'm just saying that the way that they took over was actually a coup. Like in Egypt. Oops. Oops, what did I say now? Are we allowed to say that? So, the same that happened in Egypt happened actually that time there. So, they killed all the Umayyads except Abdurrahman, who fled to Spain. And he established the Umayyad Caliphate in Spain. Okay? So now the Abbasids take over and they move on until the next big one, the Turks come finally, and they take over in 1299, the Ottomans. The Seljuks in between, but the Ottomans were the big ones. And they kept the Caliphate until 1923, until the end of Islamic history. Okay?
The Fatimiyya as well.
Sorry?
Fatimiyya.
There are hundreds in between, but I'm talking about the big ones. Okay, the Fatimas were not big in that case. Mamluks, everything, yeah, always. But if you remember that, then you can go deeper into history. If you know that, this is your framework. You have a frame to understand. You have Rasulullah ﷺ, the four Khilafah Rashidin, the righteous caliphs. Then you have Muawiyah, who established the first Islamic dynasty, which is called Umayyads, until 750. And then you have the Abbasids, until 1300 around, and then the Ottomans take over, okay, with many other dynasties in between, but the main ones were this. Yes?
Oh, actually it's Umayyad because they are Bani Umayyah.
Yeah.
Because in Mecca there is like three major families, Bani Umayyah and Bani Hashim and Bani Abbas.
Okay.
So Rasul is from Bani Hashim. That's why they call it Umayyah, because he's from Bani Umayyah.
He's from Bani Umayyah, yes.
Yeah.
But he was the one who started it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
That's
his
what
son
I-
took over.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, I understand from you that from Muawiyah they call.
No. You're right. Bani Umayyah, yeah, clear. But he was the one who started the dynasty. They didn't start it before. Okay? Exactly. Yeah. Yes?
I wanted to ask, after the four rightly guided caliphs, how did Muawiyah come about? As in, how did he come to power?
He wanted to
Well, you know how did he come to power? How did Muawiyah come to power?
fight.
Well, there was a big fight actually for that.
Well, you know that there was a fitna, the issue.
Yeah.
The issue of Ali and Muawiyah. You know about this one? We just go briefly over it, okay? Ali and Muawiyah fought. Okay? And Sayyidina Aisha took also part.
Yes.
And she regretted it later, right? Okay? So, the idea is, because it is a very complicated issue and we can go very deep into this one and still we will not find a solution to this issue, it's better not to discuss it too much because we don't know exactly what happened. We cannot follow the sources 100% of what happened, why did they fight, who, what, exactly. There is a lot of subjectivity in this issue. Because that's why we have the Shia who are saying other things now. That's why we have, other groups saying things after that one. So it's better to leave it as it is. Next one after Ali was Muawiyah. We have the issue of Hussein and Hassan, right? Okay, this is also that comes in there, but it makes it very complicated if you go into something like this. We can maybe discuss it afterwards if you want to. You can maybe find out more sources if you wanted to make up your mind. I've made up my mind. So if you want to make up your mind, you can find out. But it's something that is not something, it's not easy. It's not something that you just say, this happened and that happened. Okay? All right. So, but as I said, let's not be naive and let's look at Islamic history as we have to look at Islamic history. Bloodshed, killings of brothers, killings of fathers, killings of sons. That happened. Okay? Let's not be, why I'm saying that, why I'm insisting on this one? Because if you now think, if you now want to believe everything was great. When we were Muslims, when the Muslims were ruling Spain, it was so great. They were all loving each other and everything was fantastic and everything. When you believe that and you come in contact with one of these Islam haters who know that better than you do, they will eat you alive and you will become very, very, very unbelievable in your deen and everything that you're trying to promote. They will not believe what you're saying then, because you are actually in a cloud nine up there. You believe something that is actually not true. So we have to be, first of all, we have to be sincere to ourselves, honest about it, and then we can move on. Yes, we had in the Muslim world people killing each other. We had in the Muslim world brothers killing each other. And we'll see it with the Ottomans. They were terrible. World, you know, brother killing, son killing father, father killing son. Okay? Everything was there. Very early already. Okay? So, yeah, if we move on quickly to Portugal. Portugal, as I said before, Portugal became a little bit earlier independent, already in the 12th century actually. And in 1139, okay? There was a big victory at Urique, which is in Alentejo in Portugal. Alfonso Henrique declared himself independent of the rule of Castile of Spain and declares Portugal independent under his own crown. He was given the name Dom, which means the King of Portugal. That's when Portugal became Portugal. You understand now what happens with Portugal? Actually, no, not do we understand now. Portugal becomes here. That's Portugal, huh? You know, Spain, all right, Europe. Now, Spain was still under Muslim rule. They were still fighting. Portugal became Christian nation, independent. What could they do now? What now? Now they're independent. They don't have the Muslims anymore. So what now? What do they do now? Exactly. Where do they go to? Where can they go to?
Africa.
Exactly. They can go either to Africa or Brazil, America. Do you understand why Brazil is becoming the only Portuguese-speaking country in America? Where do they have to go to the Portuguese? They didn't have anything else but going over the sea. And they had to go to the Americas or Africa. That's exactly what they did. They went to Africa, they went to Morocco, and they went to the Americas, Brazil. And they were the first Christian colonialist nation in the world. The first ones. They had to. Not they had to, they didn't have to become, of course, but they had to go out because Spain was still fighting. So, do you understand now, if you look at the connection in history, how important it is, why the Portuguese, why were the Portuguese the first ones to arrive in India? Why were the Portuguese the first ones to arrive in Australia? The Portuguese seamen were the first ones to arrive all over the world, Europeans, European, Portuguese, and not the Spanish, and not the British, and not the French. It was the Portuguese because of that. Everybody was fighting in Europe then. Everybody was fighting. Portugal was independent, they had nothing else to do, so let's go and see. Okay? The compass was invented by the Muslims already. They knew from Muslim sources already that there is land out there, so they went to discover the land, right? And enslaved the rest of the world. So, Portugal. Now, if you look at this, this is the Algarve, the south of Portugal. Cities like Lagos, Sagres, Portimao, and Faro. Faro is the capital of the Algarve. Now, Lisbon is up here. Lisbon is here. Here. Mura, do you see that? Mura comes from Moros. Moro. Okay?
Where's Alfama?
The Alfama is a part in Lisbon. But look, another city is called Almada. Almada. Arab. Okay? Alcácer, look. Alcácer. Okay? So,
Castle is castle,
Castle. Yes. Okay? Exactly. Now, that's the Islamic center in Lisbon. Nowadays, modern Islamic center in Lisbon. Okay? Just to give you a feel of it again. Now, and this is something that the Muslims have left behind in Portugal. Okay? This is an old fountain still. Do you see the architecture, everything? This is Islamic architecture from the time. Okay? 9th and 10th century in Lisbon, in Portugal. Okay? Now, this gives you an idea. I show you the map now of how the Christians went down. The Muslim mistake. First of all, when they're talking about the Muslims invaded, it's very important to use the correct word here. The Muslims, the Arabs, the Moors, as they use in English, they say Moors for Moors, right? Moors. You've heard the term Moor. So the Moors, the Arabs, whatever, they came to Europe, they invaded. They say they invaded Spain. Because of that, yeah? Islam was spread by the sword, right? So what fits is the Muslims invaded Spain, right? Around 700, the ruler of Al-Andalus died and his son tried to take over. But Redrick, one of the military leaders, took over and the son was killed. Julian was loyal to the former ruler and against Redrick, so most of the relatives of the king were with him in Ceuta. So, listen to that. So, we have Julian against Rodrigo, Redrick. I write the Spanish version. Rodrigo is Redrick in English, okay? So, Julio, against Rodrigo. Julian, both Spanish people, both Christian. Julian was ruling Ceuta. In the north of Morocco, there is a small part which still belongs to Spain nowadays. It's called Ceuta. It comes from Arabic sector. So Julian told the emir, listen, I will give you Musa ibn Nusayr. The Muslim ruler was called Musa ibn Nusayr. So Julian came to Musa ibn Nusayr and said, listen, I will give you Ceuta, I will give you all information about Al-Andalus, and I will supply you with ships and equipment as long as you go and you kill Rodrigo and give me the throne. Do you understand this?
Why would you do that? You're given all these slides and this.
Because Julian wanted the throne in Spain.
Julia from
Rodrigo was ruling Al-Andalus. Okay? Julian was in Ceuta, that means in Morocco. So he says, I want you, they're cousins by the way. So I want you to go and kill my cousin and give me the throne. I want the throne in Al-Andalus. So Musa says, that sounds good. So what you got to do then? I'm going to give you Ceuta. I'm going to give you Africa, as they called it at that time, right? Because then the whole of Africa would be Islamic. So okay, that's cool. So let's go. You provide me with everything. No problem. I give you ships, everything. So now I want you to understand carefully. Rodrigo was his enemy, Julian. Both Spanish Christians. Julian gives the ships and the support to the Muslim Musa ibn Nusayr and tell him, go to Spain and get me the throne. Fine. So Musa ibn Nusayr sends Tariq bin Ziyad to Spain. Tariq bin Ziyad opened Spain. Within 7 years he was in France. And, well, you know what? They liked it in Spain. They say, listen, it's very easy here. The Jews and the Christians in Spain accepted Islam very easily because they saw the Muslims as liberator. So they begged them to stay there. They said, please do not get us this guy here. If this Julian comes, then it's going to be as bad as Rodrigo. So the Muslims say, okay guys, now it becomes Muslim land. So we stay here. The initial idea was not to come and conquer Europe, as they wrongly portrayed. There was no interest in Europe in 711. Europe in 711 was a pothole, not to use another word. There was nothing to gain in Europe. There was nothing to gain in Spain. Nothing. There was no civilization. There was no high culture. There was no universities. There was no toilets. There was nothing that time. So there was no interest from the Muslims to go to Europe. They wanted to go to Africa. That's where trade was. That's where gold was. That's what they wanted. So they got the offer from Julian. They said, okay, but when they arrived in Spain, in Al-Andalus, and they saw that the people accepted Islam en masse, and they wanted them to stay there, it became Muslim land. So they said, no, we're not going to give this to Julian, because these are our people now here. So they stayed in Spain, in Portugal for 700 years. A very important point to understand here. Now, do we understand this, guys? When somebody comes and tells you the Muslims invaded Europe, that is not true. They wanted Europe. They see it from our perspective nowadays. That time Europe was nothing. Europe was worse than Myanmar. There was nothing to get from Europe. They were called to do that. They, of course, had a profit in it, a benefit. So they went. All right? A very important point. Now, what do they do? This is the Umayyad Caliphate. So look how far. This is France. But this north, they left. So all the Christian kings and the Christian elite, they went to the north, Asturias. And they were hiding there. It's not that the Muslims couldn't go there. They just left them. The weather was bad. Anyway, it's bad out there. You know, it's not something to gain. So leave them. That was a mistake. That was a major mistake. Because they established a Christian kingdom up here. And slowly but surely, they moved down. So, from here, it becomes already 750, it's already bigger. In 800, this is Christian, all of the territory here. By 1050 is this, by 1150 this, by 1200 this, by 1300, by 1492 there was just Granada. Within 700 years, the Christians were coming slowly down, slowly down. Why? Not because the Muslims became weak, but because they started fighting each other.
No. Yes, this
Okay.
is what they call more than kings. It is
Taifa. They became Taifa, yeah?
Look at our
Right. So this emirate that was one caliphate before became split in different taifas, in different parts, and they're all fighting each other. Some of the Muslims went together with the Christians to fight that Muslim, and then this, that, and by 1492, Granada was taken. Okay? And the way was taken. You know, the ruler of Granada, his mother told him, why are you crying? He gave the key away to Isabella, to the queen and king. And he gave the key away without fighting. His mother scolded at him. She said, I don't know the exact quote, but she said, why are you crying like a woman over something that you couldn't defend like a man? That was his mother. That was the end of the Muslims in Spain. But it went on still. I mean, Muslims stayed there until the final expulsion of the Muslims. In 1492, the first people who were expelled were actually the Jews. And what happened to the Jews in 1492 when they had to leave Spain? Where did they go to, guys? Where did the Jews in 1492 who had to leave Christian country, where did they go to?
with the Muslims.
To the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire in 1492 was very strong on the other side. The Sultan said, come to me. The Jews, great, let them come to me. You know, it's not like the Muslims nowadays. I know today we have Israel and all this nonsense, but guys, we have to understand, we don't have a problem with the Jews. We have a problem with Zionism. Zionism is our problem, not Yahudis, not the Jews. Okay? Do we understand this? Because there are Jews out there who, together with the Muslims, go and demonstrate against the Zionist state because they don't support Zionism either. We have to understand that according to the will of Allah, according to the order of Allah, they are Ahl al-Kitab. We have to respect, tolerate them. They were living in our countries before and they were flourishing. Spain, the golden period of the Jews was in Spain and later in the Ottoman Empire. Wherever there were Muslims ruling and the Jews were under them, they had a golden age. Whenever they were in Europe under Christian rule, they were persecuted. That's just simply the truth, you know. I mean, take it or leave it. I mean, that's simply how it is. Now, yesterday there was a brother sitting in front. He asked me, who are the, I think, did he ask Murabitun?
Yes, Muhidun, Murabitun.
Yeah, who? No. Somebody who, is this person here? There was a brother yesterday here who asked me and I said later. I haven't forgotten about it, but later meant today. So, he asked about, I think, Murabitun, right? Now, the Murabitun are basically the Al-Moravid rulers, okay? They came in the 11th century, and they came from Africa. Okay? Again, I mean, they all came from Africa, but the Al-Moravid, there was another dynasty, Muslim dynasty. They went over to Spain, and they took over after the Umayyads, basically. They took over, and they were ruling Spain for not even 100 years, less than that, actually. And the next ones who came are the Al-Muwahidun. So they are the next ones, the Al-Muhads. This is a different dynasty, okay? We need to know these three different dynasties. We had before the Umayyads, then we have the Almoravids, and then we have the Almohads. Now what it basically means is, when people tell you the golden age of Spain, they actually refer to the ones before these two came. Okay? Freedom and tolerance and the establishment of science and everything was actually mainly before these came. These were sects, two sects who were very strict in their understanding of Islam, but I don't have exact sources and exact understanding of what they actually, what type of Muslims they were, but some of them were quite strict towards the Christians then. So they are not wrong to say, certain people, that's not all true what you're saying. It's not true 700 years of Muslim coexistence in Spain was so great and tolerant. That's not true. They are right. But you have to understand what they misunderstand. There's a certain period of time that they think that's how it was. As we Muslims think that the whole time it was like that. It was great and golden period. It was not the whole time like that. From 1200 on, the rule of the Muslims in Spain went downhill. And that's when these guys came in. Okay? Now again, then we have some, okay, Al-Wahid, they came from, as we said again, from Africa again. So, we saw this one. Yeah, up to there. Any questions with regards to Spain or Portugal, quickly? I do have questions. What did Julian want? What was his problem?
The kingdom of his cousin.
Oh, no,
Yeah, the kingdom of his cousin.
Huh?
The kingdom of his cousin?
He wanted Tariq to conquer Spain for him.
No, not Tariq, Musa ibn Sayyid. Right?
Musa, sorry.
Tariq was a general. So Musa told Tariq to go.
yeah.
Okay. Who said this first? I don't know who said it first.
Me.
No. Okay, bro. What was the policy of convivencia?
What? So what was it?
The policy of convivencia.
Coexistence
Okay.
between the Muslims and non-Muslims.
Who did that?
Muslims.
Where? Not only in Portugal. In Andalus. Good. Okay. What happened to Portugal?
Christians took over.
Yeah, Christian took over in 70 years?
No.
770.
You guys are here one. Fine. Okay, so the Portuguese, a little bit more clear, a little bit louder for everyone. So what exactly happened to Portugal? They
became independent and spread it out towards Africa.
The idea of which century? 12th century. Okay, good. And they went towards... Okay. What happened in Spain in the meanwhile? After Portugal became independent, on its own, a Christian nation, they went out, they colonized the rest of the world. 1139 this happened, so the 12th century. What about Spain? What happened there?
Not independence, but there's a war between
They start fighting each other.
Spain and the French.
Yeah, who starts fighting each other?
Muslims.
Okay, a little bit more elaboration maybe? In Spain, what's happening in Spain? A little bit more, I want to hear a little more. It's true, it's part what you said is true, part what you said is true, but I don't think it deserves a book yet. What happens? They fight each other, true. The Muslims in Spain, but they didn't just start then. They started already before. That's why the Christians were becoming stronger and stronger, were coming down.
Oh, they moved to the Ottoman Empire.
Who?
The Jews.
No, yeah, the Jews, they did, yeah. But then the Muslims as well.
Oh, I'm coming to get the book over here. I'm coming to get the book over. What did you just say now? We're talking about the 12th century. We're talking about the 12th century. Let's be clear. 12th century Jews, Ottoman, it doesn't exist Ottoman Empire at the time.
Oh, I missed that.
Okay.
They started breaking down in percent.
After
In two
700
types.
hours.
Very good. The Muslims in Spain, right? And then
believe that the Christian there didn't start with the time until they moved to
That's not in
fighting with
Spain.
each other.
That's not Spain.
Then until they kicked the Muslims back out and be that
Come on, man.
It's more or less it started at a forming alliance with the Christians to fight other Muslims.
Okay.
That's how we say.
What about others from outside? What's happening? With Spain from outside, Muslims who come. What's happening? So they're fighting each other. They're asking for help. Who comes? No. Hey. 12th century is already dead. Musa bin Hussein was in the 7th century. Okay.
The
8th
Ottoman
century.
Empire.
No. Mixing it up. In the 12th century, 1139, Portugal becomes an independent Christian nation. Clear?
Yes. Stop.
12th century. It's good to keep it in centuries. It doesn't have to be the exact date. Okay, 12th century Portugal. Portugal goes out, conquers America, Africa, Asia. Spain. What's happening in Spain? Who?
The fighters fighting each other.
The Muslims are fighting against each other. They establishing taifas, and then what then?
They all killed from
The
Christians.
Christians came.
The Christians were coming down.
This would,
What about?
Muslims going down.
What about? No. What about the south end?
This was Africa.
Oh, wait.
Yes.
What is this here? Look. Look. Who's that here? The Almohad and the Almoravid. I want to hear that.
Yes.
The Almoravids are first. They come to help the Muslims in Spain
Yes.
to put order. But as soon as they leave, everything starts again. Then the Almohad come. As soon as they leave, again they start. Okay? No book. Okay. Go on. This is 12th century. Look at that here. Okay? So now, what about the last bastion, Granada? When does it fall?
1492.
There I want to hear exactly a date. Yes. I said I want one date. I want you to remember 711 and 1492. The same year that Christopher Columbus whole arrives in America.
I said 14th century.
Well, then you're wrong. You're still wrong. There's 15th century. Somebody said 1492. I heard it actually.
I said it.
Okay, then answer me the following question. In 1492, okay, Granada falls. Fine.
I don't know.
Who was expelled? No, listen carefully. Who was expelled?
The Jews.
Quiet, guys. He's supposed to. Who was expelled? Who had to leave Spain?
Jews.
Okay?
That's it.
No. The Muslims had to stay. They could stay still. They had an agreement between Queen Isabella and the Muslims. And within 7 years, okay, they got rid of them. But 1492, the Jews had to decide. Either they become Christians or they leave. But most of them had to leave. So many of them went to Portugal. And many of them went to Morocco. But most of them went to the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans took them over. Sultan Selim actually allowed them to come to his empire and tell them, listen guys, and you know what he said as a quote? He said, what you call Queen Isabella and this King Aragon, these guys from Spain, you call them wise? They got rid of the most important element in their kingdom, they got rid of the Jews, they come to me. And that was intelligent, because the Jews brought up Istanbul. When the Jews arrived in Constantinople, in Istanbul, they brought up everything what you need now. When you see nowadays, the economy of Istanbul in the 15th century was actually not doing very well, because 1453 they had opened Constantinople and they needed people to come and to live and to build it up. And the ones who built Constantinople were the Jews actually in 1492 and onwards. Okay, it's just simply the truth again. All right. So, yeah.
The book.
Do you think you deserve a book now, honestly? Because you said Jews after you heard all of them say that?
I said it. I said it.
Give him a flag.
Okay, another question. Another question.
What?
I'm black. At this moment I'm black. Not black. Another question.
Something about.
I'll come back to you. Don't worry. Don't worry. I'll come back to you. Let's just move on with this. Right. So, important one thing. did you get one important thing? Oh, today what time is it, guys? It's 8 o'clock. Can we have, are you alright if we have some minutes more?
Yeah.
Yes, love
Yeah,
to
yeah.
talk.
Yeah, alright.
Good. Good. Excellent. That's a very important period of our. We're talking about 700 years of Muslim history. In which year are we now in? Islamic year?
1435.
Half of our Islamic history played in Al-Andalus. Have you ever realized that? It's the same like, have you ever realized that Al-Najashi was the first ruler to accept Islam and he was not an Arab? Have you ever realized that 700 years of our history played in Al-Andalus? Have you realized that Al-Andalus would have, without Al-Andalus, would have never had the Renaissance in Europe? They would translate ancient Greek sources. They would translate Aristotle, Plato, and Sophocles. And they would give it through to these monkeys here. Because that's what they were. There was nothing here. There was nothing. That was absolutely nothing. They didn't even know how to wash themselves. And you know how they recognized a Muslim in Spain with the Reconquista, they call Reconquista, the reconquering, when they got rid of the Muslims and the Jews. You know how they recognized a Muslim and a Jew? The shops, they would offer any customer, you know, tapas. Have you heard of tapas? That's pork. So it's like, oh, my friend, come. Come sit with me. You want something to eat? So, no, thank you. Oh, are you a Muslim or a Jew? Because the church was persecuting any Muslim or Jew that time. And they had to hide. Many Muslims were doing, you know, hiding at home, and they were making Ramadan at home and praying and everything. So, one thing, that's hospitality, Spanish hospitality. That's how the tapas developed. Second thing, they would see people washing. That's suspicious. No. Are you know, are you right? Yeah, I just washed my plate, you know. It's like, I saw you washing yesterday, what's happened to you? So, I'm not joking. Washing was indicating that there was something wrong with them. They must have been Muslims or Jews. Because just these people wash. Okay? So, you know, imagine, and you know what the best is? They call, you know, in certain countries, in certain languages, they call Muslims dirty. You know, the psychology says, if you look at psychologists, you say actually, they say that the opposite, what you are, you portray on your enemy, okay? And you make it look bad on the enemy, although the enemy is not the one, but it's you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's psychology. So, quickly, Italy. We're talking about Al-Andalus, right? We're talking about, I call it, this is the period of Al-Andalus, guys. This is not the, I have to take them away because I don't have space. Can I take them away? So 711, Tariq bin Ziyad. So we're talking about the period of Al-Andalus. The period of Al-Andalus starts in 711 and finishes in 1492. We just looked at the Iberian Peninsula. We just saw Portugal and Spain. But the Muslims didn't just go to Portugal and Spain. And they didn't just have the convivencia policy just in Portugal and Spain, but they also went to Italy, to the island of Sicily. Look, this island, Palermo, Catania, this island here. This is the island of Sicily. The Muslims stayed in Sicily for more than 200 years, 250 years, during the same time that they were in Spain. And they left earlier. They had to. Okay? So, this island here became Muslim for more than 200 years. You know, do you anything Italian cuisine, anybody? Do you like Italian cuisine, yeah?
Yeah.
You know, what do you know of Italian cuisine? Pizza. Somebody said pizza, yeah? Pizza is not Italian. Pasta is not Italian. Ice cream is not Italian. All was brought by the Muslims to Italy. Ice cream brought by the Aghlabid dynasty from Tunisia. They brought it over to Italy, and it has become the national symbol of Italy.
Is kebab Greek?
Shish kebab maybe.
It's a question, it's not Turkish or Greek, I don't know, they're both, you know, together. Alright, so now, pasta came from the Middle East. Pizza came from, all the way, from Lahmacun, from the Middle East again. And ice cream came with the Muslims to Italy. Anything that is Italian is actually not Italian. But don't come and tell them. You know what the national dish in Sicily? Do you know what the national dish of Sicily is? Couscous.
That's from Morocco, yeah.
Why the hell are you laughing? Yeah, couscous. The national dish of Sicily is couscous, guys. And then the easy thing is when you deal with them, you know, because they don't pay attention to it. You tell them, you know, what is so Italian? What can I eat which is typical Sicilian or Italian? They come and think, I'll make some good couscous for you. Excellent couscous. My mama can make good couscous. I said, good. Where does couscous come from? You call it even couscous. They call it couscous. You know, couscous, of course, from North Africa. Of course. Okay. Now, Italy. What happens to Sicily? That's what the Muslims left behind in Sicily and in Italy. You will find quite some of the heritage from that time, like in Portugal before. That is a church. It used to be a mosque. Okay, that happens a lot. Now, interestingly enough, just a quick one with regards to Venice. Venice is in the north of Italy. Did the Muslims ever go to Venice? No, never. How come? Look at the palace, the Doge's Palace of Venice. Look, Islamic architecture. How come? They copied the Muslims. Next to fighting the Muslims, they were also copying each other. That's how it was in the past. That's how it still is nowadays. We're living in the beautiful city of Portsmouth. What is this thing over there that looks like Dubai? Yes, yes, yes. They copy each other until nowadays. That was normal. That is a normal cultural exchange. Muslims copied also non-Muslims. Non-Muslims copied Muslims. And in Europe especially, there was not a lot that they could give to Europe to Muslims. So the Muslims gave a lot to Europe. And one of these was the architecture. One of this stuff was this. If you go to Italy, which was never Muslim, Venice was never Muslim, they never made it up to there. They copied the Muslims. That's another palace. That's actually the palace in Venice again. At the island of Sicily, look at the names, guys. There is a city called Marsala. There is another one called Mazzara del Vallo. Look at Syracuse. Okay, that's a Greek. No, it's Greek, believe me. That's more. Anyway, you can see that Mazzara del Vallo, Marsala is Arabic, right? Al-Carno here. Okay? This is Arabic. The Muslims stayed there for 200, 250 years. Okay? So Sicily became a Muslim country. What happened after the Muslims had to leave? When they became too weak. It happened all before they had to leave Spain. What happened to them? The Italian king, the Norman king, took all remaining Muslims and took them to Lucera. Lucera is a city in here. This is Bari. Lucera is somewhere here. So he took them from Sicily and exported them all the way to Lucera, all together on carriages, and took them all to Lucera. Lucera is a city where in Lucera we will find a cathedral. The cathedral used to be a mosque for these people. And nowadays it's the Cathedral of Lucera. The main cathedral of Lucera was a mosque by these people who had to leave Sicily, by the Sicilian Muslims. Okay? They have discovered, by the way, according to research, they found out that in Lucera until nowadays, they found a lot of they found a lot of DNA from the people living there. 85% is North African, still until nowadays. So these people were forcefully converted into Christianity, and they had to leave their deen or they had to leave the country. Okay? Now the Central Mosque in Rome, by the way, it claims to be the biggest one in Europe. You know where it is? It's right in front of the Vatican. The Pope wakes up with adhan. Okay? That's what Italy looked like in the year 1000. That was the Emirate of Sicily. It was an emirate. Okay? And Lucera is somewhere here. And that's the Cathedral of Lucera. That used to be a mosque. Okay? That has become the Cathedral of Lucera. Right. Now, you remember before there were two words. It said Gzira and Randan. And Munira, mashallah, told us that I made a mistake. Ramadan is Ramadan and Gzira is Jazira. There's some truth in it. Have you ever heard of people in Europe speaking Arabic? There are no people speaking Arabic in Europe. Are there any people speaking Arabic in Europe? Well, you're wrong there, you see?
Maltese is similar.
What is Maltese? Maltese is 80% Arabic. It's like Moroccan, like Tunisian, like any North African dialect. People from Tunisia and from Libya at that time actually, they had an embassy in Malta, that time with Muammar Gaddafi, and they would actually do their businesses from Malta. That was their bases in Europe. The Maltese people speak the same dialect they speak in Libya. So, they say also Allah for God. They say Ramadan, but they do not mean Ramadan. They mean the fasting that the Christians do in Lent. Have you ever heard of Lent?
Yeah.
Lent, the 40 days that they are so-called fast. They call it Ramadan. How crazy. It's a Christian fast, but they call it Ramadan, which comes from Ramadan. But it's not Ramadan. Okay? The other thing was Gzira. Indeed, Gzira comes from Arabic Jazira. But it means island in Maltese. It's not Arabic anymore, it's Maltese. Like Medina. Medina is Medina, the city. Okay? So, the Maltese, they have one mosque there, which is supported by Libya, or was. And as you can see, this is Malta, the tiny island of Malta, was also part of the Islamic Empire. Okay? This is Malta. Now look at the names. Gzira, look. Gzira. Saint Paul il Bahr. Meliaha. Khawkia. Khagra. Gharb. Nadr. Rabat.
Yes.
Hamrun. Luqa. Muqaba. Marsakhlok. You know, and you know what it is with this is Maltese. I used to work in Holland. I was together with a girl who I used to work with her. I mean, she was Maltese, and she used in her. She was speaking Italian. They all in Malta. They all speak Italian and English. Maltese they speak to their grandparents. And I was telling her, listen, I don't remember her name. I said, Kifolk. Sorry. Kifolk. It means how are you, right? Kif al-hal, you know, in Maltese. And he was like, you speak Maltese? I said, no, I speak Arabic. I said, you see, you understand me? I said, he was like, no, we don't speak Arabic. I said, I just asked you in Arabic. I said, how are you doing? You understood me, right? He said, no, we don't speak Arabic. I said, no, you speak Maltese, right? What is Maltese? I said, no, come on, you're not, what, you're going to tell me now, Muslim and everything? No, I said, no. I'm just asking you, what is the language you speak with your grandparents? You don't speak English, you don't speak Italian. What do you, and why are you ashamed of it? This is part of your culture, part of your root. Yeah. It's the only Arabic dialect written in Latin. Okay? Now, Paris and France. Last thing, Fractiné. You remember somebody had Fractiné? Fractiné, Faracchinet. I mentioned before, the Muslims had a colony basically in the south of France, which is nowadays in the area of Monaco, Nice, there. That's France. In this area. That used to be Faracchinet. Fractiné, or in Latin, Fraxinetum. And these people were called Andalusis because they came from Al-Andalus.
Yeah.
They came over the sea, they settled there and made this their colony, their base, and from there they went to conquer Switzerland, to open. I don't want to use conquer. They opened Switzerland from Fractiné. Okay, they opened Switzerland. Now, Faracchinet, here we go, Saint-Tropez, this area, okay. From here on, they went into Switzerland. Now, excuse the language up there, I took it from online, obviously this is not mine. Invasions in the 9th and 10th century, of course we cannot call it invasions. That's how Europe was opened by the Muslims until the 10th century. Do you see that? There is one route which is Al-Andalus, Spain. There is the other route going to Fractiné, France. The other route going to Sicily and Italy. Okay. Later, the Byzantine Empire, the Ottomans coming from the east, of course. Okay. There you go. Spain from 711 to 1492. Portugal earlier. Sicily, the Muslims were expelled from Sicily in 1091 and had to go to Lucera, as we mentioned before. And after that, they all had to leave. Okay? That's what happens, right? Christian comes, they take over. Either you're getting killed or you have to accept Christianity. And if you accept Christianity, you're getting killed later. All right? That's our history. That's history we need to know. Switzerland, guys. The Muslims came from France, from down here, Fraxinet, all the way through Geneva, Lausanne, Verbier, Interlaken, up to St. Gallen. Switzerland, you know, they speak 4 languages officially. The biggest one is a language I love, is German, right? German, this one here. St. Gallen is a German-speaking area, exactly at the border to Germany. The Muslims, actually, all this part of Switzerland was once part of the Islamic Empire. They used to trade. They found in Switzerland, in this area, in Lausanne, close to Lausanne, they found old gold coins from that time. They were trading. So they found coins. They found one of the oldest watering systems in Europe, in the south, in Schür. It's not there. Schür, they found an old watering system from the 9th century, guys. It's still there. It's still there. There's not a lot you see in Switzerland anymore, but you need to know. You need to know. If you want to go and see that, you can go and see that, right? And this is what I'm doing, by the way. These are the projects that I'm doing here, what I'm busy with. I wanted to introduce this quickly to you. That's what I'm doing. I have done 3 books already. I've already uncovered some parts of our history, and it's mainly the Ottomans in Hungary, in Vienna, and in Greece. You know, these are books here with DVDs at the end. So I went to these places and I made the documentary. So if you want to support the projects, please, I know you're students, but it's a tenner. For £10 you get a DVD and a book. So if you want to support these projects, my next project is leading me to Italy, inshallah. And I want to make a book and a documentary the same in Italy, but it all costs money. So the only way to get money in and to be independent, not being dependent on some Arabs or British or whatever people, you know, I'm financing everything myself. So if you want to support, inshallah, this work, then please, there are DVDs here and there are books here. Now, this is, I want you to remember that. If you take something with you, then this is it. Okay? The Muslim settlements in the Mediterranean Sea up to actually even Switzerland. From 711 to 1492, Andalus, Portugal and Spain. From 831 to 1072, Sicily, Italy. From 870 to 1090, Malta. From 889 to 973, Fraxinet, France, up to Switzerland. Amazing, isn't it? Mind-blowing? Muslims in the 9th century in Switzerland, guys. And they're telling us nowadays, it's an important religion. We had nothing to do with Muslims. They came in the 1960s as Turkish guest workers. Okay? They were trading with them. They were living there. They had families there. Okay? And they had to leave this country because that's what the Christians do when they arrive in a country. It might be black and white, that's fine, but they told you at school, or there you have learned that actually Islam was spread by the sword, right? And the Muslims were bad people. Now I'm telling you that the Muslims, as soon as, wherever they were living together, they had a coexistence policy, a policy of coexistence where Christians, Jews, and Muslims were living all together. In any part of the world. In Switzerland, it was like this. In France, it was like this. In Spain and in Portugal, it was like this. In Sicily and in Malta, it was like this. Okay? So, now we went a little bit over time. Any questions quickly towards the end? Any questions? If not, I do have. Come back to you. Where are you? You want a book, right? Tell me something about the opening of Switzerland. What can you tell me? What do you remember when we just spoke? What did I just say? What about the opening of Switzerland? What happened?
Muslim and
Well, you know more than you did an hour ago, right? Did you know that Muslims went to Switzerland? Did you know that before? No. Okay. So, when was it? Do you remember the century?
No.
century?
No.
9th century.
Huh?
No, you think.
9th century.
No.
Between 8 and 9.
Okay, 9th to the 10th century. Yes, okay. What does it mean century? What is the 10th century? Tell me there.
100 years.
Huh?
100 years, like.
Yeah, which one? What is the 10th century?
The 10th
From to, yes.
From 1000 to
No.
No.
From 900 to 1000. Okay? So 10th century means in between the 900s. 11th century means 1000 as 12, 1100. Okay? All right, come on. There you go. Okay. What happened in Malta? What about Malta? What do you know about Malta? Quickly. I'm just telling you one thing. Malta.
Speaking Arabic.
Yes, Arab.
If you say this, and everyone's going to be like, of course, man, you guys, Arab, you sure you know what are you saying, Malta, blah, blah, blah. No, be a little bit specific. What exactly? The language of Malta, the original language, Maltese, is actually it's an Arabic dialect. As close as Libyan dialect is. The Libyan dialect is. Okay? And
So it is, when you say like, still like, they're like grandfather and grandmother speak Arabic. Is this clear or just?
well, no, they don't say Arabic, they say Maltese.
Maltese.
Yeah, Maltese.
Well, I cannot say Arab. It's Maltese. It is.
It is a Maltese language. It has become a language in Malta. It's a Maltese language. I mean, but it is originally it is an Arabic dialect.
As we say, like Egyptian language. But
Yes, exactly. Yes. Okay. They call God Allah. Okay. They call God Allah. Okay. Okay. And quickly, 2 more questions with regards to Tours and Poitiers. What happened there? What was that? What was Tours and Poitiers again? What was that?
Christian kick off Muslim.
When was that? Do you remember that?
Huh?
The century. The century. Do you remember the century? Not the exact day. Okay, the century.
20.
What?
19th.
19th century. No. Okay, the century when they stopped the Muslims from going over into France, that was in the 8th century. Okay, 700 something. All right, the 8th century. Okay. Okay, quickly this one. And last but not least, girls, what are you doing today when you're sleeping? What's up? You know, girls, we have to do the girls. We can't do without girls.
I don't read anything.
What is the national food of Sicily?
Couscous.
Yeah. Bismillah. Good, excellent. No. Any questions, anything? Yes, no.
Where does the word religion come from?
Religion?
Yeah, what does
In
it
English?
Yeah, no, it's a Greek word. What does it
No,
mean?
it's Latin.
What does it mean? Where does it come from?
It's a Latin word, but exactly it means the etymology I will have to check out for you.
How far is Greek?
No, it's Latin. It's either Greek or Latin, so you're wrong
I think
here.
it's Greek. I think it means keeping it.
It is not Greek. It is Latin. Greek is therischia. Alright, so religion, religis is Latin.
But what does it mean?
That's what I said, I would have to find out what exactly it means. But I guess, I assume it comes from legis. Legis in Latin means reading. So I assume. Okay, but I would have to check this.
You know the word moros? You said
yes.
Yeah. The word means like moral.
Yeah, most probably comes from that. Most probably, etymology, it might be. You know, that might be. They say Moors, they use the word Moor, okay, and they use the word moral. And I was always wondering myself, where does this moral come from? It might be.